This is a very fundamental question, but I don't think I've ever asked you this directly. Why education? Why is that the thing you care about?
Because school sucks.
You're preaching to the choir.
I mean, it just it really, really, really sucks for people who are self-driven and have a lot of energy and who actually care about learning. Dare I say, actually care about learning. School kind of sucks. And I really didn't like it. And it felt very unjust that I needed to sit in a classroom for so many years. And it was very clear to me after doing that for so many years what it could actually look like to do it right. And so it's fun to work on this. It's meaningful to work on this. It's important to work on this. And there's so many ways to use the internet to deliver an experience at a quality, at a scale, at a price point that isn't possible with traditional schools.
Do you see a roadmap from working on a course for adults about writing to working? Because what you're talking about with your inspiration is writing or teaching rather with kids, education for kids. Do you see, it sounds like everything that you're talking about translates. In my mind, it very clearly maps onto everything else.
Right.
But do you see a path for you where you want to address other elements of education too after you get this delivering a writing course on the internet thing right?
Yeah. I think that'll be another chapter. But, we tried to launch a high school program and it just didn't work. There wasn't demand for it. And sort of learned the hard way that the world isn't quite ready for that yet. And
Why is it not ready?
I think parents are very, very, very risk averse with their kids. And I think that the sentiment around online education is still pretty negative. And kids are busy. They're in public schools all day. They're sort of sitting in classrooms. And I think that what it's going to go to is you basically go to some place and then you're going to have an option of just hundreds of different programs that you can plug into. Mm-hmm. And that's just a little further away than I want it to be.
I feel like COVID was both a step forward and a step back with online education, the perception of online education, because everybody brought school home during the pandemic and they had Zoom school. And it really shifted the Overton window of what people are comfortable with. It's not weird anymore to talk about homeschooling and online education. It feels like there's been a huge shift. But I also feel like it set the bar so low for what a Zoom classroom looks like that I think it also negatively impacted people's perception of taking a class online.
Yeah, I have a hilarious screenshot of a friend at a Ivy League university, and the professor just cannot figure out Zoom, and he has that infinity window, like a Yayoi Kusama mirror room, and it just goes on in perpetuity, and you just look at this, and it's just this professor in his 70s who clearly can't figure out Zoom, and you're just like, okay, no, if this is what people think online education is, no wonder they don't like it. But this is how the future always is, right? There's certain parts of the future that sort of are way ahead. The world takes a while to catch up, and this is standard stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm very bullish on online education in the long term, which we've talked about extensively before. I think that we're just getting started. We haven't even scratched the surface as a society around what online education can look like. But the things that are working are very powerful. They're working very well. And there are a bunch of different schools for both kids and adults that are doing amazing things with online education, yours obviously being one of them. And I think it's just a matter of, it's just like a normalization kind of thing and an exposure thing where people have to see that these are working. They have to hear the case studies. They have to hear the testimonials. Do you have other thought, what shifts in your mind the perception of online education to make people ready for your teen course for teens? If you were too soon, what makes it, when do you think it will be time, or what do you think needs to happen in order for people to be ready for what you were building?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think movies about it, I think will really change it. A movie that normalizes it is always a big thing. I think another generation, right? It's sort of like, the Planck principle.
No.
So it's basically that science progresses one funeral at a time. And so scientists don't change their minds. It's just that the old scientists die and the new ones come in, and that's how science progresses. And I think that there's something there with education, right? So now you got the homeschoolers, and then people who are homeschool will then say, hey, maybe my kid should be homeschooled. They'll tell their friends about it. And then you sort of just get this slow increase rather than, hey, I was raised in a very traditional school and now I'm not going to do online education. There's no way. That's too much of a big risk. And then also just success stories, right? Like you have clearly, if you look at the discourse, like there's been enough successful people who've gone to Montessori schools that people who are even pretty risk averse are like, oh, Montessori will work because I know a bunch of successful entrepreneurs who've done that. But we haven't gotten there with online education. But Maria Montessori was doing her work in like 1920s and 30s. It takes some time, but better not take that long because the system really has got to change. And there's certain principles that I think are really important too. I like the heuristic that doing is better than listening. Like we have just way too much consumption, sit back, passive consumption. And so this is actually the thing. Like I actually am very excited about Wall-E-ifying education in certain ways. You're sitting back in this crazy entertainment room and you're just getting an amazing experience. But, so I want to make your consumption experience way better, but have way less of the consumption. And so the problem is like the consumption that we have in the current schools isn't nearly immersive enough and there's way too much of it. I'd rather have way less of it and make it way more immersive. I went to the Van Gogh exhibit. It was like this sort of moving art installation. There's this one room you sort of lie down on beanbags and sort of through the flow of Van Gogh's art, you can really come to understand his life. And it's just mesmerizing. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful. And I think that what is going to be able to be delivered in people's homes and schools in terms of getting live streamed amazing consumption experience is going to be incredible. But doing is better than listening. We have to get people doing stuff way more. I often think of the word creative when the sort of standard way that we think about creative is that creativity is basically some combination of intelligence and openness to experience. And actually, that's fairly biological. So it's very hard to sort of shift your creativity. It is true that if you do certain psychedelic experiences, it does seem like you move one standard deviation over in terms of more openness to experience. So there's little tweaks that you can have, but creativity is quite biological. And that's sort of like, I can't really do much to change that. But there's another almost definition of the word creative that I would really like to introduce and get people thinking about, which is your propensity to create something. And what I mean by that is like, are you just sitting back and reading, sitting back and just watching a movie, a TV show, and just sitting there and consuming the experience? Or are you consuming things in order to create something? And it's funny, like if you watch kids, I think our natural inhibition is just to create things, but something about the modern world has made us very consumption oriented and has taken us away from being creative. Once again, propensity to create. And I think one thing that we just need to get people doing is just whenever you are consuming something, thinking through what kind of creativity is this going to lead to? Because it makes the idea stickier. It really improves your sense of taste. And it makes you much more discerning in terms of valuing what information is of quality, what's signal, what's noise, and what matters to me, what doesn't matter to me. And I think it's just, we need to get people more creative in the sense that they are constantly creating things more often.